not good.
You want to wait 5 minutes for Sunny, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
Go.
How'd I get that on there?
I talked to him today and he said he'd see me at
Poltergeist.
6.
I don't understand how I got that.
Sonny.
Listen, my iPhone, it does,
must not be coming
it does
for
whatever
this.
it wants to do.
All of a sudden, world
follow
clocks
what you
showed
tell
up.
them.
You know
It
anything about
dials
this?
people. It goes to different screens without me touching it.
Weird.
know, yeah.
It's, I complained.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I gotta kick in this time.
I must have done something.
thank you.
It's generally operator error.
How come this phone, if it's in my pocket or somewhere and I get a call, it don't
Oh,
make no noise?
would that be mine?
But if it's sitting here, it makes a noise.
Money?
I don't know.
The $5 you
either.
owe me?
money?
Yes.
It's
Do
hateful.
I owe
Thank
you
you.
any money?
That's right, I owe you money too.
That's right. I see, I said, I'd rather have you owe me, because I'll remember to collect. I won't necessarily
Good.
remember to pay.
Because I don't remember any of this stuff at all. I'm easy that.
Yes, I had a 20 and you had 13, remember?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And you only had like a $2.
Yes, I had soda, yes.
Around $2.50.
Yeah, a $2.50 soda.
Yeah. Better to owe it to him all his life than to beat him out of it.
So true, so true.
That was my dad's favorite saying. I'd rather owe it to you all my life than beat you out of it. Yep.
I wonder what I put in there. Oh, I know what I put in there.
Thank you.
There he is.
Hey, Sonny,
We waited for you.
we waited for you.
Good for you.
The brotherhood and the sisterhood waited for you.
So,
Mine is on dartboards everywhere, Sonny.
you ready?
I don't do that.
No, we're just waiting. I just gave him the 1 minute sign, so. And there's no agenda on your machine, so.
Okay.
Well, they just called us about 10 minutes ago. And complained about the board and Ralph.
This is the Grand Terrace County Board of Commissioners Special Budget Meeting. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2014. It's 3 o'clock. If we could stand and do Pledge of Allegiance, I appreciate that, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a special budget meeting for the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners, and we're scheduled to do these from January to March of 14. Purpose of these meetings is to discuss departmental budgets. So if we could have roll call, please, Sarah. Thank you.
Inman,
Here?
Lathrop,
Here.
Max Bauer,
Here.
Rennie,
Here.
Thomas,
Yep.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Lemko.
Here. Thank you very much. Next, we'll have the first public comment. If you could read the rules, please.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Thank you. Do we have anybody from the public like to comment? Please step forward. You got 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Kathy Coffins Sheard. I reside at 415 West 7th Street in Traverse City. My question is, and maybe maybe Chairman Lepkel, you could answer this question. Is there a schedule that is available to the general public of when specific budget discussions will happen relative to each department? And then if so, can I request that information?
Yes, there is, and yes, you can. I'll make sure, there is a calendar. I have it someplace.
I was very appreciative of, in the Record Eagle, that I assume, Ms. Lutz, did you publish the list of the meetings, or whoever? The clerks did, okay. Because I think it's interesting to me, that it'd be interesting for the public to know when things are being addressed, and that we can either come support, whatever.
I'll ask Chris to put that on our website.
It should be on our budget calendar, on the
Maybe,
calendar.
I haven't looked on the web, I
If you look
was
at the
just going to
meeting
come.
calendar, on the website.
Okay,
all
so
those-
each, like the line items that are on the agenda today?
So
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
a calendar like this.
Okay, it's a Google Calendar,
Yeah.
okay. And then, and if you notice, I mean, there's hardly anybody here. I had to pay a babysitter to be at this meeting, or in the previous. At 3 o'clock at Traverse City, if you don't have children, I understand, but if you have children at 3 o'clock, between 3 and 3:30 every day is when all the elementary schools pick up. And especially with inclement weather, this is probably one of the most and worst times that public meetings, that there isn't going to be any representation unless, you get out the cattle prod and you advertise it, and I mean, and I just think that's unfortunate.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Next on the agenda is the department budget discussion of equalization. So just to get everybody at home or that's watching this, we'll be doing equalization, GIS, Register of Deeds, Human Resources, and Finance today. Jim, thank you.
Okay, Jim Baker, Equalization Director. I'm going to stick to the 20 minutes allowed for this, so it will be a brief overview and in no way inclusive of all the responsibilities of equalization. The overview of services and dedicated staff to the equalization budget, and bear in mind that there is an East Bay and East equalization budget that is separate. And I'll do the equalization budget first. All the duties in that is mandated. We see the Board of Commissioners as equalization's customers because it is a direct extension. We are a direct extension of the Board of Commission. And we have been established by Michigan Pilot Law to assist the commissioners in the matters of equalization.
I'm sorry, I thought it was off.
She can't find her out.
Sorry about that.
I'll pause a minute.
Go
and
ahead,
wait for it.
continue.
Okay. Grand Traverse County Equalization makes 92 independent determinations of assessment levels. This is a combination of 4 real property classes, 4 personal property classes, spread out in 14 different jurisdictions. As a department, we make about 8,500. I think this year it was 8,700, but it looks like an average of 8,500 parcel value determinations, individual determinations of value. We do that to study the value in these assessment levels on 55,000 total parcels in Grand Traverse County. The county has an aggregate SEV of about $5.2 billion. That's the county's SEV level. That is a master level SEV. The process that we do has an effect on 55% of the general fund income. After we make those 92 determinations of assessment levels, we look at the assessment rolls as they come back from the assessors. We make determinations if the assessment levels have been met, and we look at the way they treated the additions and losses in the assessment process, because further down the road, that's important for creating the Headley millage rollback fraction. We calculate either in partial or in whole with 5 other counties. Headley rollback calculations on 32 independent jurisdictions and authorities. The people assigned to the duties listed here, we have 4.8 FTE positions. The approximate cost this last year as my first year as director is approximately $360,000 to the general fund budget. That's about 5.2% less than the cost was last year, and that was with the rising personnel costs. So we spent 5.2 less dollars this year than last year, 5.2%. As I looked back through the last 5 budgets, I see that the budget has decreased every year in the last 5 years. And in 2009, the equalization budget was $508,083. These services are important because they fulfill the statutory requirements as mandated by the Michigan compiled law. Now, here is an overview of services provided to East Bay Township, and this is a non-mandated service. Our customer is, of course, East Bay Township, and there are approximately a little over 8,000 parcels in East Bay. The 2013 estimated expenditure will be about $123,000 to assess those 8,323 parcels. That comes to a little under $15 a parcel. I've done a survey, and this is about the mid-range of assessing contracts in the county as far as a price per parcel cost. That is typically the unit of measure when you bid out that kind of thing. There are some costs in the low 20s and some costs probably below the teens, but not very often. So maybe even we're on the low end of the range, roughly. But just bear in mind that this cost to the county by contract is completely reimbursed back to East Bay. And I've worked diligently in separating and cataloging those items correctly. I make sure everything is cataloged correctly. When I came, the duties of East Bay were segregated amongst many people, and it was hard to figure out what the personnel costs were. I dedicated 2 people to that position, and they are dedicated to that budget, and we keep a clear division in the department up there now, and it's easy to catalog the cost. I believe this service that we provide for East Bay is important because it allows equalization to stay abreast of assessing issues. It in turn makes us better at equalization. I'll talk about if this was discontinued a little bit later. Been a lot of legislative changes since Proposal A. It's been a nightmare, actually, keeping up almost on a yearly basis. One of the biggest ones now is the personal property phase out. Nobody knows exactly what that's going to look like yet, but for 2014 assessments, my best guess, I would say to the general fund, there might be a $150,000 reduction. Best guess. We'll see, I guess. What happens from 2014 going forward will depend on a vote of the people and how things are implemented by the State Tax Commission. So kind of a stay tuned thing there. 14 was the best I could do on any kind of prediction. We had actually hoped that the gas and oil well discovery would offset some of these losses because it's a utility personal that is not being affected by the phase out of industrial and small commercial. But there is now pending legislation to make them exempt also, and Dave and I prepared that resolution, and you guys passed it, and I have heard from one of the co-sponsors of that bill. So The disabled veteran exemption recently passed. I estimate that about $43,000 of general fund money will be reduced based on what has been applied for currently, because that was a retroactive thing. And I am guessing that the amount may grow because of the lack of knowledge of the program, and as it is in process longer, more people will understand what it is and apply for it probably.
Jim,
Yes.
are you in contact with Chuck Lurchin at all? Most of these requests for property tax exemptions go through the Veterans Department. Is he keeping you abreast of how many are coming through?
I mostly get that from the assessors.
Okay.
It is something that I can reach out and maybe make a triangle out of a check and balance system in the future, yes.
The other question I have, again, on the veterans exemption. I participated in the Michigan Association of Counties meeting recently via teleconference, and I was told that the legislation is somewhat gray. In other words, the assessors really can make the determination whether or not someone is exempt or not.
Well, the bulletin that came out from the State Tax Commission implementing this procedure, I believe was very clear and took out some of the ambiguity of the legislation. And I believe that the process by which they want to implement this is probably in the spirit of the legislation, in my opinion. So
Okay.
I could show you that legislation and what is required.
I guess my question is, does the disability have to be service-related in order to qualify for the exemption? If you don't know the answer to that question, that's fine.
Right. I would refer to that bulletin. It's in my office. I didn't happen to bring it,
Okay,
so
thank you.
I will get back to you on that.
Thank you.
If we could refrain from doing questions until their presentation's over with,
Sure.
please state that. Thank you. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. Demographic changes, we're glad that the housing market is picking up. I believe you'll probably see that population is picking up also. It appears to be a sustained recovery, in my opinion. Last year, the sales studies on commercial industrial lands, still, there are more numbers of sales, but the prices are still somewhat flat there. But I believe that if the housing market is sustained, then those classes will follow also. But because Grand Traverse County is a predominantly residential community, I believe that the increases will be fairly substantial. For the most part, though, the increases are capped by rate of inflation. We have, because of Headley, rollback of millages if stuff exceeds rate of inflation, and with Proposal A, there's a cap on the taxable value, so it's two systems almost working in conjunction with each other to make sure that our revenues are capped at rate of inflation. Now, that would be during an increasing year. In a decreasing year, and if, taxable went down, then you wouldn't see the rate of inflation increases. Potential for outsourcing, some facets of equalization, it would be possible. We'll admit that. But based on my experience, the total outsourcing of equalization has met with failure in Cass County just recently, a year ago. Manatron were found lacking in their services, and Cass County had opted to get an in-house department again. Other services like appraisals can be contracted out, and in some cases when there are somebody moves jobs and there's gaps in a department right at the wrong time, they will contract to kind of fill those gaps. That's what happened when I came here. Bob Vandermark had contracted with an assessor to do the commercial industrial study. I did that in-house this year. But for the most part, in-house people, you get a more consistent, and you can determine a better baseline value with in-house people doing it year after year, same eyes looking at stuff. Actually, the Michigan Power law allows a joint equalization department, and for 2 or more counties. If the commission believed they would want to pursue that, I would suggest that the commissioners pursue other commissioners, because ultimately it would have to be the commissioners that were comfortable with the arrangement and that it was monetarily to each other's advantage. For the record, I would be not opposed to that prospect. Okay. Here's a hard one. How would you implement a general fund budget reduction? Well, the budget that we have proposed already for 2014, if you look at the non-personnel budget items, we reduced our budget already by 12.8% in the non-personnel budget items. Let's just say we requested to make a 3% decrease overall in the 2014 budget. If we were asked to do that, if I don't touch the non-personnel items, that would require me to come up with a total of a little over 29% reduction in the non-personnel items. And some of those are even fixed, like IT and some of the things, yeah. So, is this possible? Yes, for 1 year maybe. I don't think we could double up next year, but it would require us to cut training to staff, and that has actually already been cut. Part of the last 5 years, it's went down and down. And we'd have to reduce our ability to aid in any property assessment appeal process. There's a little bit of contract money that is there that I envision could be used to help fight appeals on the larger cases. A little note of positive here is that Garfield Township, the mall properties were appealed and asking for a large reduction. The assessor submitted some information to the state treasurer, and the state treasurer is going to step in and take over that appeal because it's to their advantage also. They're in it for $6 million, so good for Garfield on that. But I think if we had to reduce overall 3% this year, I think it would have an impact on our #1 strategic goal in the county, which is to maintain the financial strength and stability. Okay, the services that are not mandated and could be discontinued. Earlier I talked about East Bay. That contract is not mandated, but again, remembering that all costs are charged back to the township. If this contract was terminated, we would have 2 people out of a job, and there would be no real net gain to the general fund budget. So the equalization department would lose the ability to see through the eyes of an assessor. And I believe that would impair our ability to communicate with assessors, and that's important in equalization process. And recently, equalization has begun participating with emergency management. I see Herb there on a lot of things, and Larry, on things. And I was asked by the emergency manager if I would participate as a damage assessment team. That's not mandated, but we have done the training and we've submitted our certificates to HR, and it's taken some time out of our day. They've put this into their schedules already extra this year. This is the first year that we've had a concerted effort on damage assessment. And if there was not a competent damage assessment team, there could be lost federal recovery dollars in the case of a incident of disaster. Any further questions? Feel free to stop in my office anytime, and I'd be glad to talk to you.
Questions? Go ahead, Chris.
Jim, how much do you participate in the property assessment appeal process? And can you give me an idea what the results have been overall?
Well, that is something new that we're just trying to start up and do. I believe the commission enacted that they would participate with the city on larger appeals, things like that. There was a little money that we have that would help us if we had to get an appraisal or, so I do not have any experience at that yet. I have no data to give you on that. That was
Okay.
something going forward I was hoping to implement.
Thank you.
Other questions? Sonny?
Jim, the reduction in personnel costs for 2013, was there a vacancy during part of that year? Is that part of that money? I can't remember when Bob left and you started, I'm sorry.
Beginning of last year.
We have been pretty much fully staffed all year.
I was
Yeah.
trying to remember when Bob left and when you started, and I couldn't
End
remember.
of 2012. He
All right.
pretty much was done.
Right, right.
And Jim was officially appointed sometime.
January
short-
30th,
Okay, January 30th.
but acting clear back into December and was here in last September as deputy. But pretty much, there have not been empty slots for very long, so.
You realize that the treasurer and GIS and equalization have been negotiating over how to keep everything burning on the burners that need to be cooking. And so GIS is doing some things that, you know, aren't really GIS responsibilities. They're more belong in maybe the treasurer's or the equalization office, and the equalization's doing things that maybe belong in the treasurer's office. And there's a kind of a symbiotic relationship, and they are all making it work on limited resources. So I also wanted to add a couple other things. The East Bay contract includes supervision and indirect costs.
Yes.
I wasn't asking a question, I was actually getting that out of him. Who else is contracting for assessment services other than East Bay with the county?
That's it. That's it.
What other jurisdictions have?
Well, I
Hired
believe
contract
Garfield
assessors.
is in-house.
The supervisor doing pretty much everybody else's?
No, they're contracting.
Oh, okay, they're all
Townships are-
contracted.
The townships contract with assessors, you know,
Yeah,
some of the
very-
assessors will do 2 or 3 of the small townships.
Yeah, that's good,
Okay.
that's good.
Other questions? Dan?
Yeah, a couple of them. You said this year we're 5.2% less than we were last year in terms of spending money on this department. How did you do that? Why did that happen?
Well, part of it is because I did the studies in-house, and we didn't contract out the commercial industrial studies.
Okay, so.
That's a large portion of it. And then we trimmed other places also. My deputy, she watches the budget very strictly for me.
No, with East Bay Township, it just is turns out to be, we do the work for them, but we get paid for it. It doesn't net out as a loss to the county?
No.
Nets out equal, or is it net out as a gain?
There's no room for gain. Any loss that may have occurred in the past, I'm trying to rectify,
So-
and they know that.
Do you have, is there going to be a loss in 14, do you think?
Well, what I meant was, by clearly defining who's doing the work, then I can clearly charge back the appropriate amount. That, you know, I just am, and then I keep track of the paper and the postage, and everything is just kept track of right down to the T now. I think better than what it had been in the past.
Can we do a little enterprise here and make some money on this? You're doing the work.
Well, you'd probably have to revamp the contract to East Bay, and you might lose it. It's a tenuous contract.
So the only benefit is what?
I believe the benefit is that as an equalization director and as their assessor of record, I have to keep my head into the assessing, what is happening to the assessing community, because I have to do it myself. And in doing that, And you'll hear a lot of directors or even state assessment and certification division people say that some of the best directors were formerly assessors or still are assessors as their directors. So it's just an advantage to keep me sharp.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's also important to point out that the increase in valuation of properties because of what you found has really been a benefit for Grand Traverse County and East Bay. So, Charlie, you had your hand up first.
I was just going to ask further on this East Bay situation. Seeing through the eyes of the assessor, is one township enough for you to get that eye out there, you think? Or could we look and see if we would be competitive with some of these other bids that are out there for townships? Or don't you think we could be competitive that way?
Well, we would have to add staff to bid. There's no room with existing staff. I mean, you need to try to limit, well, like you can see, there were over 8,000 parcels for 2 people to look at. We're supposed to look at 20% of the parcels every year. If you do the math, that's a lot of looking. And that amount of looking actually kind of matches the looking that equalization is doing as far as numbers per person, too. And I'm sorry I didn't have those numbers, and I hesitate to quote them off the top of my head. But
Appreciate that.
But it's in there if you wanted to kind of do the math on that.
Okay, Sonny?
Well, fundamentally, I've always had a real problem with the East Bay contract. I believe there's a checks and balances when the township does the assessment, the county equalization reviews the assessments, and then the state tax tribunal has ruling over both. I'm a firm believer that the checks and balances is averted when the county does when the equalization department does this assessing.
I hope to convert you someday.
I doubt it, but, you're more than welcome to try. I do appreciate the fact that we now have dedicated staff to that process, and we can actually see dollars. When it was being done throughout the equalization department, I never believed that we were covering all of our dollars. And I still would have to make sure that we looked at the numbers to see whether or not that is true. And, what dedicated staff and with doing it the way you're doing it now, it's definitely better to accounting, for an accounting standpoint, than it was the way it was done previously. The only other question that I have is, are we covering legacy costs with those people? We've had extensive discussion about a individual who is under contract to the Grand Traverse Rural Fire Division, and that we have incurred legacy costs that are not being covered. If these county employees are being paid for by East Bay Township, I want to make sure that East Bay Township is also covering legacy costs for those.
I think most of
That
them
is the effort we're trying to put forth, and there have been discussions with
Right.
Dean and Dave.
And we are now-
Like I say,
Are they defined benefit
we're making,
or defined
No,
contribution?
it'd be defined contribution.
Contribution.
So there is no legacy cost?
Well,
well, there's still
There's the
legacy
match.
costs. You're
Yes,
still-
there
You're
is.
still paying
Oh,
6%.
yeah.
There's the
Okay.
match on the retirement.
Chris?
But we are getting supervision as well,
Yeah.
which we weren't getting until Jim came on board, and we talked about the East Bay contract, and we said, we need to talk to East Bay about a percentage of his time, since he has so many people that he supervises, and 2 of them are East Bay people. They're getting a portion of his time charged back to that contract.
I know that.
That's something we weren't getting before.
I'm 99% sure we were not getting the proper accounting previously with that East Bay contract. I'm hoping that we're better.
So,
Jim
Chris?
has tightened it up.
And,
quickly.
Before you get started, we're running behind on time, so, if we could tighten up our questions a little bit. I don't want to cross over anything, but I just want to keep us on time, too.
In that vein, are indirect costs being billed as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Indirect costs, I asked that question earlier. And indirect is being, and I think that has been all along. Supervision was not being charged.
Dan?
All right.
What do you think it costs us to be involved with the emergency management? You're using your staff. Can you give us an idea in a year's time how much it costs us to do that?
once the battery of tests are out of the way, it is probably a minimal cost, and I haven't tracked it yet.
Okay, but minimal $100,000 or?
No, I would say that
2 hours a month?
probably 4 hours per person this year was spent doing online and classroom time. And I've started attending all the monthly meetings. But depending on the education going forward and what we have to do, and if we do some tabletop exercises or not, or if we do field exercises or not and participate with that,
Is it 50,000?
No,
it,
Okay.
those are the
Yeah.
3 to 5, 3.
just a
Okay,
few
that's what I
thousand,
wanted to
just
know.
a few thousand,
I'm not
less
going to
than
hold it down
10,000.
to it, but I
No,
get some idea.
no, just a few
Yeah.
thousand.
Okay.
Dick?
I just wanted to mention that I, like Sonny, have always been opposed to the equalization department doing assessing also, because it takes a step out of due process that I think should be there. I think the township should do their own assessing, and equalization should watch over them. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Well, I invite you both down, and I'll explain what I'm doing and show it to you.
Well,
and-
hey, I know why you're doing it, but.
So, okay, is there any other
As an old
questions?
assessor, I'm just gonna say I've always been opposed to it.
I'm going to move it along. Jim, thank you very much.
Thank
The only
you,
question
Jim.
I have is, technologies-wise, is there any wish list?
Pictometry.
Yeah? So, yeah, I think it's,
Okay.
I think that's one of those things also that we may be asking this, because we did talk about technology being a number one wish list, most of the departments, and, and how much money we're looking at to be able to buy some of this stuff, to be able to get ourselves up to where we need to go.
It's oblique angles of aerial photos, oblique angles that you can measure heights of buildings. You can look at all four sides of buildings and get measurements off buildings. And with new proposed legislation that you have to have written permission to be on properties anymore, I don't know how to get accurate assessments without it, so.
Okay? Charlie?
Do you think that'll lead sometime to total technology to do your assessing?
It is an indicator of where you still need to go out in the field. You'll never not go out in the field, but you can certainly review a lot more data in a hurry.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ernie? You got 2 minutes. Oh, I mean,
On your mark, get
we'll
set,
give you the
go.
time. We'll give you the time. Go ahead.
Okay. Ernest Cachalia, GIS Director for the county. I'm going to anticipate one question. For Dick. The new plat book.
Ooh,
This is a proof copy. I had a couple of issues that I had sent it back, but we're going to press here real shortly on that. So that'll be out shortly and in the treasurer's office.
You got them now?
What's that?
You got the books now?
I don't have the books in hand. This is the original proof. I had to go through 2 more proofs before we got it right, hopefully, knock on wood, and it's going to print. I'm going to keep this pretty informal. I didn't write up anything specific about the questions. I can read through them, and then I'll point you to the data that I supplied here to explain some of it. The first question being the overview of services provided and dedicated staffing. I've got 2 pages of that first handout I gave you. This one, the one that has the black and white cover. You can see that we serve virtually everyone in this community to some extent, from several county departments to so the quasi-governmental institutions like Rural Fire, Council of Governments, Road Commission, schools. We've worked with the state of Michigan and the feds. And in a lot of these, you can see we even worked with several divisions of the federal agencies. So now, regarding the question of the cost involved with this, there's really no way I can get a handle on that. As large as this list is, I may not hear from these people for 1 or 2 years and then be dealing with them for a week straight and have to dedicate 1 or 2 people on my staff to do it. It's hard to anticipate those things. And especially with, when it comes to like the prosecutor or the law enforcement, they're usually on my doorstep 24 hours before they need it. And so I have the flexibility with my staff now that I can pull them off their projects and put them on something that's on the front burner. And I don't think anybody's been disappointed by our staff. I think if you speak to the prosecutor or the sheriff, they've been pretty happy with the job that GIS has done for them, and often on a last-minute situation. I guess to answer why these are important services, I think, I could go through this list one by one, but they range, and the importance, I think, there, I have listed in the last column there. I tried to break it down as much and categorize it as much as I could. It goes from health and welfare to quality of life. Sometimes there's revenue issues. Sometimes we're dealing with infrastructure issues. We run the full gamut, and I guess that's the importance of that is for you folks to decide. I know they're important to the individuals that we're helping. Going on to, I'm missing a page here, so I'm going to have to wing it. Oh, no, I don't. I have it here. I'm sorry. Regarding state legislation, there is no particular legislation. I can tell you that with regard to the state, however, there have been some initiatives that we've been working with. We worked with 911, the Enhanced 911, which is the ability for dispatch, gives the dispatchers the ability to dispatch across county lines. The road networks are joined, and adjoining counties could request the data from those counties, so that they have that information available to them in their dispatch centers. In order to do that, that was a grant that we got. I don't know if you recall that. And that data sits on a State of Michigan server now and is available to all our adjoining counties, with the permission, by the way, of our 911 director. There's been some projects at the state for cooperative data acquisition. They happen to fly an aerial imagery, I can't recall if it was not too soon or not too much after our last flight, so we didn't partake in that. However, currently they're doing a LiDAR and imagery contract with one of the vendors at a discounted rate. We're hoping we've got 2 years left on the potential LiDAR flight, where we submitted for grants for the 2% grant last year and didn't get it. We again submitted for the 2% grant this year, thinking that we may be able to use some seed money that we already put away. That portion of the funding from that grant, we've spoken with the state of Michigan and I'm sorry, not the state of Michigan, but the feds at FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers. Also, USGS is interested in this data, so we think we might be able to put something together there if we can get this grant through the tribe. Now I'm going to talk a little bit, I guess, about demographic changes. And what I'd like to do is pretty much just read through here. The citizens in this area and all over the nation are moving to a more mobile network or mobile environment. And that network the way that network works is that the GIS information is extremely important to that, because, as you know, we all have GPS in our phones now. So the accuracy of that data is incredible. How important that is. Also, the ability to deliver that GIS data for the local citizens is a function that we can now provide. We have what's called ArcGIS server on site as part of our contract with our GIS software, which allows us to create mobile applications for GIS. We did stand one up. I've temporarily taken it down because of some issues I had with it. But I do have 3 standing applications out there right now under the GIS department heading, demonstrating the new GIS software that's available. And we'll be moving into a more mobile environment as time progresses. That's all I can say is that, that's where things are going. I think that the counties has a desire to get, to incorporate a lot of technology in their cost savings philosophy, and I think that this is one of the advantages of doing this in a mobile, environment. Okay. One of the things we were asked was to provide some potential revenue sources. Currently, GIS is doing the addressing for the county. We charge nothing for that service. Many counties do. I think that at a reason, I've looked at several of them, and there's sliding scales for the number of addresses that you're assigning for a contractor or an individual. Or there's flat rates. There's all kinds of different methods for charging for this. But to get a rough number, I would think that we could probably generate about $3,000 a year if we put a charge on our address process. Another potential source of revenue is our parcel layer. At our current costs, based on well, I guess it's our current cost is 20 cents a parcel. It's our enhanced access policy that is where that comes from. We would charge about $10,000 for our entire parcel layer, and that goes up every year because obviously we're seeing more parcels. It's prohibitive for a small company to spend $10,000 a year on a parcel, on the parcel layer, even though it's very valuable to them. So I have not heard of any counties doing this, but I think that a subscription to that may be a solution to that problem and may provide a source of revenue for us. If we would have to contract naturally with a company, and they'd want the data up front, but I think we could come up with an arrangement where they would pay it off over several years with updates to the parcel layer in that period of time. And I think it's kind of out of the box, but I think there's potential for that sort of arrangement with some of the bigger organizations in town, the surveyors and the civil engineering companies are interested in it. So we could look at that. The other potential income that is possible is we currently have a 50% cost share with tax map creation, and that involves some of the parcel splits. We charge differently depending on whether it's labor or materials, but I've created a little table there for you to see how that is currently generating revenue. That's this page here. I probably should have numbered those pages, but that's this page here. I think there may be a way to, it's going to increase anyway because we'll be bringing East Bay on board this year, and likely we'll be bringing Garfield Township on board next year, or yet maybe even this year. So there's some potential for revenue there. We could look at increasing that cost share or finding a way to push a little more of those costs onto the townships. They are finding this GIS data very valuable, and I think that they would be willing to pay a little more for it. I included in the next sheet, which is this one. This you may have seen. This is an exact copy of a sheet that I provided to you before. Last time I was in here talking about budget stuff. This is the savings attributable to GIS. I won't go over that again, but it does demonstrate that we are saving the county and a considerable amount of money through our doing the tax maps in-house, providing a web site for citizen inquiries as far as parcel layers concerned. And then we're also have our road atlas and plat book sales. The next topic is suggestive as an alternatives. The first bullet being, what is the potential for outsourcing or merging with other entities? I do see a possibility for merging with in-house. We are taking some of our functionality and passing it back to the departments, which is what GIS is really supposed to do. In other words, Jim's still here. Warren in his office is doing GIS mapping at his desktop. Steve Hanna in dispatch is doing GIS, and in planning we also have had a GIS technician working up there with brownfields. So I think that we are taking some of our duties and passing them back to the people that own the data, and that's very important. That's a fundamental aspect of GIS, and we're making those moves right now. I think that outsourcing at this level probably would not work. There's been examples out there where counties have contracted to do what we do, and generally speaking, they're not satisfied with the product. When we redo a township such as Garfield, we started doing Garfield Township in redoing we had one person dedicated to that, redoing that township in maybe June or July. He was still working on that. Probably about 3/4 of it is done. We Q&A every parcel. Every parcel gets looked at, and I don't think you're going to find a consultant who will do that. We look at it. The value of GIS is in its accuracy. That's a fundamental law with GIS, and we make sure that we are accurate. We probably have one of the premier, at least the parcels that we've redone, one of the premier parcel layers, excuse me, oh, scratchy throat, in the state, and we're very proud of that. The last thing I'll touch on is the reduction. This is the colored page here. It's not going to be too impressive, I'm afraid, folks. I looked at this. I broke out, as you can see across the top, what it would take to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, percent savings across our budget. I was able to reduce some of the costs to get us down into with a 1% at a 1% saving without using any MIS. Obviously, labor, I can't do anything about that, or employee costs, I guess I should say. But and without touching the MIS budget, I was able to reduce about 1%. I think I could probably do that. Getting into the 2% area, there's just no way I could do that without reducing some of the IT budget, and we are extremely technology dependent department that would really impact us, and so on and so forth. At 1% we're cutting out any training, and at 3% we're cutting out any conventions and conferences, and those are vitally important to us too. So. I don't see a lot of wiggle room there. We've been asked a number of times to reduce in the past, and we've done what we can. I think we're getting down to the point where there's just not much left to reduce. And with that, one other thing I wanted to touch on, I don't have it here, but last time I looked at the budget, and Dean probably may have a better idea of that, but I think we had about 5% excess in our 2013 budget that we would be returning to the county general fund. We do our best to conserve. We've been very diligent about that. And as an example, I did want to get an example, is we have a GPS unit in our office that's about 10 years old. That's absurd for a department such as mine. You know, we should have, at this level, we should have our technology, a GPS unit that's right at the epitome of what GPS units are right now. And they're picking up satellites, they're picking up European satellites, and they're picking up Russian satellites, and ours are limited just to the American satellites. And it greatly affects our ability to catch data out there. We went out to Power Island and did that, and we compared that with the city's GPS unit, and theirs was far superior. Theirs is about 2 years old. So we are pursuing a new GPS unit, but we're not going to be purchasing it. We're hoping to get it through a SAW grant. So we're looking at other ways to fund this technology, but I believe we've been very diligent about, and quite parsimonious, if I can, with regard to our budget. So with that, I guess, any questions?
Okay, Chris?
My question is primarily for Dave. Dave, you recommended that we, in your budget presentation, initial budget presentation, that we not fill this vacant spot.
Let's correct what you just said, because I didn't recommend that we eliminate anything. I recommended that we do pension bonds. But when I was told that I had to cut, there were places I had to choose to cut. And given that GIS is a non-mandated function, it's one of the few areas outside of the Sheriff's Department that we can actually look at as a non-mandated service. That would be a place to cut. And right now, we anticipate that there would be a retirement, and today there is a retirement.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, today is the day of the retirement. And so, that's something that we threw out there for consideration. If we were to have to cut, that would be a place where it could be cut without violating any state laws. Ernie has been asking me for 2 months now to fill that position because he wanted to get somebody on board. But I am under a hiring freeze established by the board and cannot fill that position by myself. And I cannot, in good conscience, after the county board told the Sheriff's Department, you can't fill 2 deputy positions, I can't in good conscience tell Ernie he can fill this position, as critical as it may be in his department. And if you'd like to tell us why it's so critical.
There's another handout. I'll tell you why it's so critical.
The segue is there.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You'd think I was coached.
Well, I put this on the cover. This is the current county web front page. And the reason we're getting an applause is because we do our best to serve. And we're able to do that because we have staff to do it. This is from, I'm not sure if Sandy says where she's from. Sandy is with DTE. And we are one of the companies that we often help with questions regarding parcels. The next page is my requisition, which Dave denied. Just proof that I asked. This is the responsibilities on the 3rd page there of the current technicians who's retiring today, Bob McCord, if you know my staff. Bob normally, what he's doing right now is working on the Garfield project, but soon here he would be moving into the parcel reconciliation process, because after March Board of Review, we have to create a new parcel layer based on the assessment rule for 2014. And Jim is here, and Jim will be knocking on my door probably around June 1st, tomorrow, asking me for that parcel layer, because it's very important to them, it's very important to the assessors, and it's very important to the public. From March to June, I basically have 2 technicians working full-time on that, and myself doing background stuff. So this is a large part of his responsibilities that would set us back considerably if without that, and we'd be end of summer if I were lucky getting that parcel layer, and I know that Jim would not like that very much.
I have one more question, if I may. What is the price tag on a new GPS unit?
The one we're looking at, which is state-of-the-art, is about $11,000.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
But
you.
it's real,
That's it.
they're very nice. I mean, this is not your consumer GPS unit.
I believe you.
And, you know, and the last one we got, by the way, was on a grant. We've never actually purchased a GPS unit.
Other questions? Sonny?
I don't know if this is for Ernie or for Dave or Jen or who, but what will the cost of this GPS technician be if we do replace it? I'm assuming it is not in the 2014 budget.
No, it is.
It is in the
Oh, it
14.
is in the 2014.
Yeah, it's just under the hiring freeze, and the cost was
You mean you kept the FTE plan? as it was?
$58,840.
Okay.
Now, with the new position coming in, it's going to be less than the
Yes.
58
And with a reduced,
So
because of,
about 50 grand is
50
the
grand.
cost to replace this GIS technician. Thank you.
and the funds are budgeted, but as you know, you're looking for money.
Other questions? I did ask a question of Bob. I went to Bob's retirement party, and if you're interested in finding out what Bob's going to do for the rest of the summer, he is going to be riding his bicycle across the United States. And he will have a blog to be able to do that, and so you can keep track of him going across. I guess our website is also going to have a GIS or GPS unit attached to his bike. that's
he
gonna
has a
be tracked.
GPS unit, and we're hoping to grab that data in real time.
Every 10 minutes, he'll update you as to where he's
And
at.
we
So
could,
it'd be kinda interesting
technically,
to
we
see
could
that.
map that.
But one of the questions I asked him, I said, what do you think about the possibility of being able to contract for that service for some of these programs in here? His comment is that, you know, you have to have somebody that knows something about Traverse City, cares about Traverse City, and is willing to spend the time and the effort to be able to get the job done right. How do you find that with a contract? You know, and that would be the good question as to, you know, can you find somebody that's retired, wants to work 2 or 3 months out of the year? I don't know if that person is even available. I don't even know if it would even make sense. But it's just one of those questions that Bob, you know, is very committed to our community, very understanding about what's going on, and is committed to the service for the community. And it really showed in my conversation with him, and I really appreciated his comments on that.
If I could add one thing to that, Herb, it's that we have a relationship with the assessors and with equalization and with the Register of Deeds and the Treasurer's Office that a third party will not have. There's just no way they can do that. And that's, you know, that's so important to what we do. So I just don't see how you could contract for this sort of thing.
It was just a question, and I thought I appreciated his answer. Dan, before you talk, you're going to lose your name tag if you don't pull it back.
all right.
There, thank you.
Thanks. This new GIS computer, or whatever it is, device, would that make your department more efficient and make loss of a person more palatable?
No, what the GIS, what you're talking about is the GPS unit?
Your GPS, yeah.
The GPS unit, what it'll allow us to do is possibly, and we still need to establish this, I mean, it's going to help us because of the accuracy of it, and it's going to save us time out in the field gathering information. Rather than having to sit on a point for several minutes, you can essentially do this in seconds. So our ability to get data quicker is one thing. But what we're hoping to do is be able to allow other departments to use this device because it's simpler to use. And in that way, some of these departments like environmental health who have been asking us, you know, could we help them? Could we, you know, locate wells? The sheriff does have a GIS unit, but GPS unit, but this is superior to that. There's just other departments who could use this unit
You understand what it
without
does, right?
much training.
Yeah,
It shoots a point,
Yeah.
latitude and longitude point,
okay.
and feeds it to the computer system so they know exactly where that well is, for example.
Okay.
They go to the well, they go click,
You
But
can
it's
data
not
is
something
stored
that
and becomes a point inside the system.
It's not something that perhaps if we didn't refill this new position, this machine won't make it any easier on you to.
No, you need a technician to do what this technician does.
The problem we've got with GIS is that you're embarked upon it, it's a big map, It's got a lot of layers, and they're always growing. You know, the school district's got bus routes, the sheriff's got, I don't know how many layers.
We talked about a new layer
I mean,
on the next page, just yesterday. We had
Layer
the-
after layer after
we
layer,
had-
and the bigger it gets, the less,
That's the way the body's
chance of
built, you know.
reducing
You
this
start at the skin,
to
you work your
zero.
way down to the bone, and it's layers. That's how you understand anatomy, so I get it.
If I could just return to this for a second, I know I'm taking a lot of time.
No, sir.
Is it okay, Pat? It's okay.
We'll make it.
Bob has been our point man on the new parcel pilot project. I gotta tell you, my staff is great. I'm the guy with the big ideas, but I don't want to get in the trenches. Sometimes I have to. These guys will do the detail work for me without question, and I know it's being done right. Bob took up this task and ran with it, and we have a new process going in for Garfield mapping, and it's where we're going, you know. And Mike is doing the same thing on another front for me, which is something I'm going to refer to on the next page. Bob also does general cartographic duties, so if the sheriff says, I need a map tomorrow, I can call on Bob to put that map together for him. And then he's also backup for the public. Anytime, if there's no one in the office or someone else is busy, Bob can jump in and do address applications. And when I say Bob, I mean this technician. Legal description clarifications for the Register of Deeds, or he does data dissemination too to the public. I'm going to go through this really quick because I just think it's really important that you know where GIS is going and why we need this technician. We currently have an environmental health initiative. We're working with bringing up their records up to date because a lot of their records were parcel number, ID'd or addresses, and addresses have changed, and parcel IDs have migrated. And we're using the technology we have to assign a location to their files that may no longer have an identifier. We're using that technology. Eventually, we're going to actually hope to spatially enable all that stuff, so they'll be able to retrieve data from the map, bring back documents related to a well. And, that benefits the owner, it benefits developers, and on and on. And this is a meeting, this is pretty exciting. We just had yesterday, we had all the, except for Peninsula Township, which didn't show, we had all the fire departments in, and we're discussing doing a countywide water source, and I think, Sonny, you probably know more about that than anybody, more than I do, but we're going to do a water source, which means all the hydrants, all the water sources in the county will be located and will be available to 911, so they can direct a dispatched unit to a water source. They can say it's 500 feet from this intersection. They don't have to search for it anymore. If their marker's covered with snow or brush, it doesn't matter. They'll be able to be directed to that water source. And we're going to be able to tie that data back to the maintenance records on those water sources. So when they tested a hydrant, they'll be able to match that with a spatial and put it on the map. Which hydrants were tested? When we're going to go out and do it again, what'll be the most advantageous route we can to retest our hydrants? That sort of thing.
Hence the GPS.
Well, they'll use the GPS to locate some of those things. Yeah, and that's we had that discussion with them yesterday. ArcGIS Online, this stuff is just really cool. I wish I could get you guys up in my office to see this. This is standing up maps on the webs for the novice. What I anticipate in a year or two is that we'll be able to put online mapping into departments. We no longer have to do that ourselves. So equalization can be responsible for their web map, or environmental health, or the county commissioners, for that matter. We have a map out there for you guys. Those will go back to the departments for maintenance, and if they want to tweak it, it's for them to tweak. We're going to be housing the data. We'll be assuring the quality of that data, but it's for the departments to publish. It's very slick stuff, and if anybody wants to see what's coming, please stop by my office. And the other thing, and with Jim sitting here, is Jim and I have been talking about updating the parcel ownership. We do it once a year online. We're talking about increasing that frequency, so we'll be looking into that this year. And with that, What I guess I'd like you to do is consider restoring that position to me, or,
Allowing you to post it
That'll be
and fill it.
taken up at one of our other meetings.
Allowing you to post it and fill it.
to post that meeting.
Yeah. Chris?
Couple of questions, Ernie. The SAW grant, when do you anticipate you're going to hear back on that?
I've been waiting on Kevin. I haven't heard from him, so it's really up to Kevin to return, to let me
Okay.
know.
Regarding the position that you would like funded, if memory serves me, Heidi Sheppy, our county treasurer, offered to fund a portion of that, or said she could, in one of her presentations.
If she did, it was probably with regard to the tax posting, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how it has been funded in the past.
Okay, so, and that's a dedicated fund?
Yeah. Foreclosure and homestead audit funds have
So-
separate sources of
Yes.
funding.
So Dave, how much of that position can she fund?
I don't know. I have to
Can we
talk to her about
can
that.
we find out? Because, you know, we
Yeah, the
want you to
reven-
have the equipment, and we want you to have the personnel you need.
Yeah.
And if there's a dedicated fund where we can take those dollars.
The
In the past, we've done that. For the past 3 years, I believe, we have done the postings, and we were able to capture those funds for our department.
Dean, did you make a comment?
That's it.
Not at this time.
Okay.
No, that's all I have.
Other questions? I just want to say, you know, that you're just an example of the dedication of the staff that we have in our for the Grand Terrace County, and how you're always looking out for what's next, where it should go, and you got a great staff, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for saying that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ernie.
Next is Register of Deeds. Peggy?
Thank you for being patient.
No problem. I suppose I'll just start out with an overview. I think everybody knows what we do in our office, but we're a self-supporting fee-based office, so if you give me no money for the budget and I use just what I take in, I could certainly take care of myself. But we're responsible for recording and index and maintaining all the real property documents for the county. Nearly every citizen at some time or another will invest in property, and it's one of the biggest investments that they'll make. So the integrity of these documents is really, really important. If you come down to our office, I mean, we're looking at records back from 1853, and we're relying on the person that wrote that stuff in the index, you know, to search property. Our office is used daily by attorneys, realtors, surveyors, banking officers, title examiners, the county assessors, equalization, and the general public. So we have a wide variety of people that rely on the work we do down there, and that's why I feel we need the staff that I have, because it is a customer service office. And right now, we're working on a project. I recently had all the images put in the system back to 1967. So if anybody knows the Library page of the document they need between 1967 and 82, they can pull up that image, even though we have not back indexed them yet. So we are working on the back indexing for that, and it's 203,000 pages of back indexing we have to work on. Unfortunately, my office is affected by the economy. It does have a direct impact as far as how many recordings we have and what is happening there. But I have worked on ways to increase the revenue in that office with the technology that I have put, the documents that I have put in the computer. All of our grantor grantee books are in the computer. So basically, people can work online, whether they pay a subscription fee or they go onto our credit card site, search the old grantor grantee books, and pull. That's why I really wanted these images back there. So now more people can use it. Our images are back to 1967. A lot of mortgages require a 40-year search, so that pretty much, covers that. My situation is I have 4 clerks down there. All the services we do in our office are mandated. I would not consider the work they do down there clerk position, but I have 4 clerks that are probably working at office specialist jobs. So we're one of the lowest paid offices, myself and my clerks. And everyone down there is cross-trained. Everybody does the same work. I eliminated the chief deputy position back in 2010, so since then I've probably saved the county about $100,000 in salaries in my office. Other than that, I guess I'm just going to open up to questions. There's no way I would really outsource in my office. There's no big changes I see coming. And we're just going to continue to work on getting it in the computer so more people can access it.
You bought some data from previous that somebody had?
I bought our old track books, which actually they were Grand Traverse County at one time, and the county had sold them to a title company. And when the title company went out of business, I had found that they were selling, somebody that had bought them from the title company was selling them just with an ad. And I had a real concern that somebody would get a hold of those, and it would take from our revenue. Somebody could really, use it to set up a website, and so I had purchased those. But I think people use them. I think we brought in close to 4,000 last year from the track books. I did pay for those out of the technology fund. Changes I've made have increased our revenue just from copies and services at least 60 to 70,000 a year from back when I first took office. Other than that, I have money that goes back in the budget every year. I really don't have a lot I can cut from the budget. I don't overspend, so we do have money that goes back.
Questions?
I only just have one quick clarification. Based on the activity level of recording, refinances and purchase of new property and both residential and commercial, you feel you're adequately staffed to handle, to make sure that the deeds and everything that's being asked to be recorded, you have enough time to examine, make sure they're properly prepared, filled in, witnessed, and you get those recorded on a timely basis and those kinds of things?
With myself and the 4 other people, yes.
Okay.
Right now, we have about, I think, 8 weeks marked off on the calendar for vacations for different people down there. And you take in people being sick. Some days we're slow, but right now we have that back indexing that was just put in there, so it's, guaranteed work. And there are days when we're just swamped down there. Every computer will be full. We're answering questions. You get tied up with customers for 10 to 20 minutes. It's not just they come in and say, I want to pay this. We have to search things for them and help them out. So, and they expect that service.
Dan?
I remember at the beginning of the year, or sometime last year rather, you had advertised for a new person. Did you hire that person?
Not a new person. I was filling a clerk's position.
okay.
I had a clerk that left,
Yes.
and I was filling her
And
position.
did you fill it?
Yes.
Okay.
And
So
that
our-
was
our hiring
before the
freeze didn't
hiring.
stop that.
It was before the hiring freeze
Okay.
that I did
That's what I
it.
wanted to know.
Yeah.
And
She got
since
in
then,
there.
many a position
Right
has
under
been
the wire
filled
there,
anyway.
Peggy.
That's what I wanted to know.
And that's
Okay.
why I'm saying, I don't have an office specialist. I don't have a chief deputy. The work they're doing down there, I challenge anybody to come down and spend a couple days trying to just even answer a question at the counter. Everybody I have down there either has banking experience, real estate, legal. I will not hire somebody that does not have that training because it takes too long to train them. If anybody wanted to see this, this is the documents we recorded last year. There were almost 24,000. But this lists 165 different types of documents. So it's not like you can just, not every document that comes to the counter is different. And to review them, I mean, people constantly want some kind of legal advice that we're not allowed to give, but we have to understand the legality of the document, and make sure they meet the recording requirements. So it's just not a clerk's position.
Thank you. Other questions?
Who's next?
David has.
Go.
Oh, Dave, go ahead.
Sure. Registered Deeds Automation Fund, established by statute. It's got about $250,000 in it. It's, looks like we're going to spend, we're supposed to spend $115,000 this year, in 2013. I don't know if we did or not. Probably not. I don't know, what are we spending all that money on?
Well, I can get busy.
I know, but I'm just saying, you're doing some things, you said you're doing back indexing. Is there a way we can charge staff to that?
Not really, because there's no way I could break it out. You cannot, on the technology fund, I cannot use like a union person, somebody that's getting benefits and stuff. I mean, I could hire somebody and bring them in that was maybe doing it for
Who says?
20 hours a week, but not getting any benefits.
Who says?
Well, I'm just saying, and I could use the technology money, and that's okay.
Well, I'm just wondering if we can shift some of your general fund expenses into the automation fund, at least temporarily, while you're doing these automation items.
There's
You're
been other
imaging and
counties that
automating.
have talked about that, and no, it's not.
I've done it before.
Well, I'm sure you have, but it's not on the up.
Call Midland County.
Not on the up and up.
Is this a way that we could pick up that GPS unit for GIS?
That's what I was going to ask her next.
Well, I was thinking, why don't we
Not
combine
for that function,
GIS with the Register of Deeds office and,
You can have the
We'll be happy to
technology you want.
Charge Bob a position in there, but.
Dean?
Part of that cost, Dave, is the Laredo system, the
Laredo's being charged in there?
the software that allows Peggy to record and retrieve the documents so the public has the ease of viewing that information. Peggy has also, we have all of the computers that are in your office that are paid for out of the automation fund. And over the years, Peggy has worked with a number of departments purchasing copiers, scanners that have been paid for. Peggy has been very good to work with and very creative. And Dave is right. We have $250,000 there. The state is pretty specific on what you can and can't charge, but it's not absolute. You know, you don't want to go too far with what you charge there, but I think, you know, we do have a good amount of money there, and yeah, the GPS unit probably would not be a wise use of those
Appropriate,
funds.
right.
No.
well, I don't know, I could actually talk to my software company because they also do work with other departments. And if I connect the mapping system with my records somehow.
Right. Or the aerial flyover that we need to do, that would be a
Yeah,
LiDAR.
those are stretches for the automation fund.
Sonny?
Peggy, you mentioned the back indexing of those maps back to, or documents back to 1967. Is that something that we could contract for?
I wouldn't, because I double check all of those. It's kind of like Ernie talked about, you have to have somebody that
knows.
cares about what's going on in that office, because if they're indexed wrong, if there's typos, it's a disaster. It really is. And I take pride in the work we do in the office, and years down the road, I don't want people saying that, oh, those are the terms she worked or whatever. But it's true,
Constitutional
because
responsibility.
it can be a real disaster if the wrong person. Well, we do have some issues down there from a part-time gal that I had putting some back indexing in. And we've pretty much had to clean them up and dump some of them out of there because she really didn't know what she was doing.
Other questions?
You know, on the contracting of essential functions of constitutional offices, I think, you know, the reason they're constitutional offices is that they want them done by the government. They want the government, because it's such an important task that it be correct and it be maintained properly, and I think that's why they set it up to be constitutional offices.
Could be contracted for so as it would be available sooner. It was what I was trying to.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
that's the
imaging,
reason-
the perfunctory things, you know, imaging documents, running them through a machine, and, you know, making sure that they're in there right.
But I was
You
kind
can
of,
do that.
I was excited that my software company was able to create a file so people can now pull these up even though they're not back indexed. If they know they need Liber 50, page 47, they can type that in and they'll get the image even though it's not indexed. And before, the way we were back indexing, you couldn't pull them up until you had the index. So they've created, and they really, I can't remember when I got that approved, towards the end of the summer, and they're in there already. And I'm really happy with it so far.
Okay. Any
And
other
I
que-
plan to go back to beginning of time eventually. so.
Any other questions? Thank you and your staff, for what you're doing. Appreciate it. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Human Resources. Jen, is that you?
Jen Seaman, Human Resources Director.
You're running into Dean's time, so.
She
But
has
we're
all
going to
the
give you,
time.
and we may put off Dean until another time.
Well, I mean,
So,
you all
take
know
your
I
time.
can talk really fast, so,
We know that.
yes. So I can make this as fast as you want.
No, that's fine. Take the time.
But Dean and I actually talked about both of our presentations today, and I'm going to touch on the human resources side. Dean's going to touch on finance, and then we're both going to actually address the payroll question that has already been brought up, because it involves both of our offices. So just to kind of let you know, that's where we had discussed where to go. Human resources, just an overview. We do provide, I mean, the main goal of HR is to support our employees, and then we also reduce the employer's liability through, administering the labor contracts, ensuring there are no unfair labor practices, ensuring that there are no lawsuits against the county. We have a lot of policies and procedures in place to ensure that that doesn't take place. The main areas within human resources are recruitment and retention. The first one is recruitment and retention. Last year, we had 113 positions that were posted in the county. That's just in 1 year. We processed 4,200 job applications through our online job posting, and our website had just over 31,000 hits to it. So we do use an online job posting database through NeoGov, and are able to pull those statistics out. We also administer testing to anyone that applies here at the county. Last year, we administered testing to 411 people. That includes your computer-based testing, Word and Excel, as well as we have testing within dispatch. That's specific to dispatch and the sheriff's department has specific tests to those departments. We also manage that process for them and assist them with that. Benefit administration. I've been in front of you in the last few months with our health insurance, with the dental, with the vision. We have that. In addition, short and long-term disability, life insurance, workers' compensation, unemployment, COBRA. We have a wellness benefit, flexible spending, our employee assistance program, deferred comp. We also have retirees that also have benefits that we answer questions to, and OSHA, which is the occupational safety, the safety that we have to maintain throughout the county. So a lot of benefits that we handle on a daily basis. Labor relations, as you know, 11 labor contracts. We also handle the grievances, worked with our union stewards to manage that process, and continuously evaluating our labor contracts. That does involve working with the public acts that come down through the government. There might be changes. We have to make sure we keep our labor contracts up to date. So that's something that we're continuously doing. Employee relations, that's really any employee questions outside of the labor contracts. So we have any policy-related question. We have over 50 policies here at the county, so that's in addition to the labor contract, so answering any of those types of questions. Some days I also am really more of a counselor and talk through issues and do that sort of thing, so that's also part of employee relations. Payroll, as I mentioned, Dean and I will touch on that. Just a little bit, W-4, we handle all the W-4 processing, and that is part of the separation of duties between HR and finance. So Human Resources gets all the W-4s. That is when you want to change a dependent. So if you want to change it from 0 to 1 or to 99, for example, we might have that during our special pays that are run where someone wants less taxes taken out of certain checks, things like that. But last year we processed 210 W-4s. And then 115 direct deposit changes also last year. So again, making those changes in the system, that is more of the human resources end of things. Dean will touch on the payroll end from his department. Policy administration, as I mentioned, we had 50 policies, as well as our employee handbook that we give out. It's nice, you all have one, 3-inch binder of all the policies and everything. We advise employees on that. New employees, we handle the onboarding process. A new employee comes in. They're in Human Resources for their first morning, which usually takes the first 4 hours of their first day, going over all that information. Other things, employee communication, we have the communicator that goes out every other week. Employee training, which we just had a great training on Monday for Martin Luther King Training Day. Employee recognition, maintaining our personnel files. We do use the OnBase system in Human Resources for all of our employee files. That was done before I got here, but everything is done electronically, and we scan it in and it's saved. So we do not have filing cabinets with personnel files in them. General employee support, employee safety training, assisting departments. They might need a safety training course in personal protective equipment that you might need to wear if you're going out into the water and the sewer area. We will help them with that safety training, also with safety gear that they might need. If it's old, if it's outdated, responsible for the employee safety. And then supporting the employer. It's directly, your strategic goal number 5 is directly with Human Resources, ensuring that Grand Traverse County is viewed as a fair and equitable employer. That is right in our hands, and I won't go into that, but if you have any questions on that, let me know. Staffing in my department, 5 full-time employees. We support, as of yesterday, 610 total employees. That includes full-time employees, boards and commissions, anyone that we would process any information for, as well as your on-call and your temporary employees. So a lot of people that we manage information for, house information for. We have 15 different employee groups. That's 11 labor contracts, 2 association agreements, and then 2 non-contract groups. If you added elected officials in there, that'd be another one, but a lot of different employee groups, a lot of customization within those groups. And then with our health insurance, dental insurance, if you add in all the dependents, all of our employees, and then their spouses and children, thank you, we're at almost 1,300. So those people do call us. We do hear from spouses, which is fine. We're happy to speak to the spouse, and if they have questions on anything. So that's just kind of an overall picture of who Human Resources supports. Some concerns or potential impact to services, we've got healthcare reform is the big one, the Affordable Care Act. It's changing every day, it seems like, and we have, with our health insurance, as you all know, last year, that was on a delay a lot due to the Affordable Care Act. So that's a big one that we're keeping our eyes on. The other various employment laws, the big ones, FMLA, ADA, FLSA, and HIPAA. We had changes to HIPAA last year. We've had changes to ADA. We keep on top of those. Those, hard to predict what's going to happen this year or next year, but they're constantly changing in that area. We've got Public Act 152 that limits the amount that a public employer will spend on health insurance. That changes every year, so we have that. Public Act 106 regulates our health insurance as well, sending that out to bid every 3 years. We have to do that. We have to do it a certain way, and so we take care of that, although Grand Traverse County does it every year. And then Public Act 312, that's the mandatory, compulsory arbitration of labor disputes for our police department. So there have been some changes or potential changes in that area recently as well. And then MERC, which is the Michigan Employment Relations Commission, they manage the labor disputes, work with them on arbitrations and things like that. We also had the Freedom to Work Act that came down maybe a year and a half ago. So again, those things are all involving human resources. And then alternative ways of providing our services. Really, I have a great staff. They have a tremendous amount of years of experience between them, over 50 years in my office alone. And the person, and Arlene, who handles a lot of the payroll, and she's celebrating her 20th anniversary with the county on Friday. So we have a lot of experience, work hand in hand with finance department. The alternative way of payroll would be to outsource that, which Dean and I will touch on, so I'm not going to get into too much detail of it right now. But that was a quick overview.
Wow.
What? What questions do you have?
What certifications do some of your staff have? I know you are certified, but some of
Yep.
your other-
I have my master's degree in human resources and labor relations, and then my professional and HR designation. My staff have their bachelor's degrees as well. Yeah, is that what you're looking for?
It's quite a department. So, Dan,
Was it 4 FTE in your department?
5.
5.
5 including me.
5 including, 5 full-time.
Correct. Yep, they are full-time. We are full-time, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday is the hours of our office.
Other questions? You know, it's amazing. This is the most integral department that we have in our county, and you have fewer questions here than we have for some of the others.
Yeah, but we see her every week.
Yeah.
Hear from her
Yeah,
every week.
well, I guess,
Or
yeah,
more.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll ask her a
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead.
I want to hear about this employee angst and this malaise that we hear about now and then. What's that all about?
Employee morale?
Yeah, morale. Let's call it that. Is it good, bad, in the middle? Where is it?
I would say it's pretty bad right now.
And why is that?
I think it all starts with the classification plan, in that when I first came here, I had meetings with every department head, and all I heard about was this classification plan, what was going on with it, what we were going to do, where it was going. I was not here for any of it, but I've heard about it. Probably for my first year, I heard this word Seagull every single day. So I think that started it, because some employees were told they were going to get a raise, told they were going to get an increase, and then that didn't happen. So that created some bad morale within the department. And I think that started it. And then I think it's just the overall, really the funds, the budget, things like that, have been hurting employee morale lately. So
I'm not so sure that it's probably isn't worldwide. It's not just our county.
no, I would say there's pockets of it around the county. I mean, we have 610 people, but there's about 500 of those are actual employees here. We're in gosh, how many different buildings? I think like 10 different locations. I have employees from the DPW shop to the senior center to the Commission on Aging building, the Front Street. There's employees all over the place. So it's different in different buildings. Sure, it depends on department heads like myself, what the morale is in that department. I think that that's part of the department head's responsibility as well. So, yeah.
What would you suggest to improve morale?
Classification study.
Oh.
I think that was in one of our ideas we were going to do, we never did.
Yeah, and I think the classification study has been so long, I don't know if that's really a huge issue anymore. I just bring that up as something that continues. Improving morale.
I think yesterday was a good example of how we continue improving morale.
Yeah, we're trying to do a lot of employee recognition events. We had a great outing yesterday. We had 14 employees recognized for great things. I think continuing to do things like that, recognizing employees, sometimes it's really hard to remember to recognize your coworker, so trying to help people to recognize your coworker. Remembering to post things like that on our website, getting it out to the public. County employees are doing great things. I think that sometimes only the negative is displayed instead of all the positive things that we're doing. Like Dean and I were talking earlier, last year we implemented paperless pay stubs. So you don't get an actual pay stub, a paper, and they're all emailed to our staff every other Friday. Saved us 10,000 pieces of paper or something like that in a year, plus all of Cindy's time sorting those, putting those in bags, and the confidentiality aspect of it. So we're doing things like that, but that's a good thing that doesn't always get noticed. Yeah, that's a really good question. I might have to think about that one. Really good question.
Would you say there's general satisfaction with the latest labor contracts?
I think it's mixed. The health insurance was had a big effect on the staff, a lot of the staff. The changes to the health insurance plan. But I think overall people were okay with the labor contracts. But the health insurance was a big change for them. And but they're willing to take that on, knowing that you pay for all of your other insurances. So paying for that health insurance is one thing we have to change too. But yeah, it took some negotiating, but we got there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Go ahead, Dan.
Are people afraid of what we might decide in the next few months? Trying to make budget changes and stuff. Could that be part of the
Absolutely.
The unknown?
The unknown is a big question mark for a lot of people. I think that's affecting morale. Yeah, and it's hard. A lot of employees value their jobs. They really do. They've been here a long time, and like in my department, I have a 20-year employee and a 27-year employee, and they value their jobs. There's great employees here. Captain Hall has a ton of people with a ton of years of service at the jail. He's just the only one sitting here, so that's why I'm pointing at him. But, he's got a lot of great staff. We have a lot of really good employees, really good people here. So with that. But yeah, I think the unknown is just most of the people like their job, like what they're doing. They do, and they want to stay working for the county.
Well, I was just talking about that, how devastating it is to lose your job, and especially if you're past 50. So I'm certainly understanding of that.
Yeah, and I think the economy around has a impact on that too. So.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Sure.
Good job for you and your staff. Love working with them.
Thanks. All right, Dean.
Dean?
Can you talk that fast?
Good luck. Boy, that's going to be a hard act to top there, Dean.
Oh, you want to talk about payroll now?
Yeah, since Jen is here, let's talk about payroll. One of the questions on your letter that we received was potential for outsourcing services. I'm going to let Jen start because she's kind of on a roll here, and I'll see if I can keep up.
See if you can stay out of the way.
Yeah. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I guess the separation of duties within the departments, again, my department handles from the employee aspect, really. The employee wants to make a change. They want to make a change in their deduction. They want to make a change in their direct deposit. Anything like that comes through Human Resources, gets entered in Human Resources. And then the actual pressing the button to pay people is done in Finance. So we don't have the same person that's entering it also pressing the button to pay people? Is that the easiest way to explain that?
Yes, and it's a required internal control, so it's been designed over time to do just that. No one person has the complete control over processing someone's. Even Dave, I mean, for us to add an employee to the system requires Dave's approval.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of checks and balances built into the current system.
I think the main thing is payroll is more than just cutting checks. Entering the employee deductions, we have wage garnishments, things like that we are legally required to do. I mentioned direct deposit changes to W-4s. There's local, state, and federal reporting requirements that we have to do. A lot of that is handled through Dean. Keeping up with tax code changes, what's going on. This time, well, a few weeks ago, we had to do that for 2014. Were you saying something?
Well, even changes annually, the W-2 requirements change. Within the last 2 years, we've had to report the employer value of health insurance that's provided. It's just an informational item that's on the W-2, but it is required to be reported, and those are the things that we take care of.
I-9s, we have to legally have an I-9 filled out by a new employee within 72 hours of them being hired. So taking care of that, ensuring that gets done. W-2s, just this year, it was 675 W-2s that were processed. So handling that, entering all wage increases, step increases, anything unique to the system, new employees, entering them into the system, special pays throughout the year if we have a personal leave pay or a longevity pay. Things like that, we have to do as special pays. I think the big thing is the instant access to data. Because we have the payroll system in-house, we can in turn then provide data to you when you need it, instantly. For example, last week when you asked about the defined benefit employees, I contacted my office, had them run a report, and they were able to bring it down. Outsourcing payroll, we'd have to contact the payroll company to get a report run and then bring it to you. So we have an instant access to data, instant access through the budget system or for the budgeting timetables.
Right, and just to add to that, the departments also have that instant access to data. I, for one, as your finance director, I review every payroll entry. Payroll, personnel costs are your number one cost, and I can keep a pretty good handle on where we're at with our budget based on just by a variance analysis with each payroll journal entry. So I have access to that information as it's processed. I mean, it's right here, it's right now, and if I see anything that's out of line, I'll talk to the person in my office that handles that, Cindy Green, and she can tell me exactly what changed or why it's changed. I mean, we can tell, things like that. If you didn't have that day-to-day involvement in the payroll process, and it's not that we spend every day on payroll, but we're hands-on payroll. There are no surprises with the payroll here, as far as I'm concerned, because of the fact that we do it in-house. So it's good to have that access to that information right here, right now.
Some of the reasons that would be to outsource payroll if you had issues with compliance and accuracy. We make mistakes from time to time. There are going to be mistakes, but we've never been fined by the government or anything like that. We don't have any of those big issues on compliance or accuracy. Time savings, the two people that handle this, which they don't do it full time. They don't do it full-time. We do not have a full-time person in my office and in Dean's office dedicated to this. They do other things as well. They have over 30 years of experience doing this. They work well together. It's very streamlined and efficient. And they're always looking for new ways of doing things, like the paperless pay statements that we did last year. What else?
The cost. Usually the key reason to outsource is because it lowers your long-term cost. Because of the size and the number of employees that we have here, it would be no small fee to outsource the payroll. We don't know exactly what that would cost, but even for a company that has as few as 35 employees, that annual cost would be $1,500. We don't know what the cost would be to outsource payroll for 600 some employees. It's going to be more than $1,500. We can come back and tell you how much time we spend on payroll, and I would almost guarantee you that we spend less time on processing payroll than it would cost us to have to outsource that to somebody else. I don't know what that is because we haven't done that, but we do have the ability to do that, and I think you'd be very happy to see that we would be nowhere near that cost when it comes to processing our payroll. Just one, we always, I think a theme that you've heard here today is the fact that how the offices work together. We work very closely with IT to make these changes. They design what we do. They've built this payroll process from the ground up. And we also work very closely with the treasurer's office because payroll tax deposits have to be made on time, and based on the size of our payroll, it's almost the same day that you, in fact, I think that payroll tax deposit is due the day that we process payroll because of the size of the liability. And as Jen mentioned, our payroll tax deposits are made. Grand Traverse County will never be, as long as we're here, we'll never have a garnishment for payroll taxes because that deposit wasn't made.
And I think ultimately, we are still responsible. Even if we were to outsource it, the county is still going to be responsible for errors and information like that. Also, we would still need to have an internal way to collect the information. So as I mentioned, my department collects the W-4s and the direct deposit forms. We would still need to do that. So the time savings involved there would be pretty minimal from that standpoint.
Any questions on payroll? Go ahead, Chris.
This isn't really a question, other than it just dawned on me. I received my W-2 from Shell today. No paper, email. The county still does theirs with paper. Are we looking at that?
Absolutely.
It's the next step.
Next
We went
year.
paperless pay statements, and now we're on to the next phase, which is W-2s.
675 pieces of paper don't have to be mailed.
We're on to the next phase, which is W-2s.
All right,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep. We just did the other one in September. It went, end of September, it went live, and we are looking at W-2s. We wanted to wait until this year, well, would be 2014's W-2, but yes, yep.
Sonny?
Well, absolutely. Even if you contract out payroll, you are still responsible. The county is still
Oh, yeah,
responsible.
I
There's
know.
no question about that. You know, and Jen's exactly right. The requirements changed continuously. As of the second quarter of 2014, all the SUTA reports have to be filed and payments have to be made electronically. Where we've always been, you know, at least in my operation, I've always mailed that check on the 15th of every month, but they have to be made electronically now. And so that, you know, it's another process, and it takes time to do that. And, you know, I don't have anywhere near 600 employees, but the list of times that people come in and want a copy of their pay stub, or the friend of the court needs to have records of what this person's wages are so as that they can verify the guaranteements, or all of the list is on and on and on. There's hardly a day that I don't have to deal with a payroll issue on 8 employees. You know, I can't imagine what it's like with 650.
Go ahead, Charlie.
So, Mr. Bott, why didn't you come up with a number? You knew it would have to come up. I don't.
Well, I've been busy with a few other things.
Oh.
My primary focus right now is closing 2013 and doing that in the black without any use of fund balance. That's what I'm working
I
on.
understand all that, but I mean, we're looking at this as a potential savings. Now, we don't have a number.
You're going to be at this for another 6 weeks. I'll have a number for you.
Thanks.
Other questions?
You don't need a number, I'll never vote for it.
How do you know? You don't know what the number is.
I don't care what the number is. It's not a service that you can contract out and make
There
any
are
sense.
specialists that do this better than you do, Sonny.
It's gonna cost
Guy
you-
can't do this better than the county. Why do you come up, where do you come up with
It's
that?
going to cost you 3 to 5%. Calculate your payroll.
I'd like to know that.
Yep. Dean, the rest of your finance? Jen, thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
This will follow pretty much the letter. An overview of services, I can be done in 5 minutes, but we provide accounts payable. I won't get into a lot of detail here. The audit committee sees what we do in that area. It's basically paying the vendor invoices and the other claims of the county, including juror fees, court restitution. We're responsible for accounts receivable, invoicing for county services performed. For others, both internal and external, we do quite a few internal billings, IT, phone charges. We do assist Human Resources with the processing of the biweekly payroll, including year-end reports, W-2s, 1099s. There's not a lot of glamorous stuff here, but my favorite, we're involved quite heavily with Dave in the budget, the preparation, the administration, variance analysis, and compliance. Financial management is a big one. It's done for the most part behind the scenes, but we're responsible for compliance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. We're doing quite a bit right now at year end, making sure that the expenditures are all in, that they're recorded in the right year, and that we've recovered the revenues that are due the county based on the expenditures that are recorded. We assist with revenue forecasting, planning, capital financing, and debt service payments, along with debt refundings when we can do that. The finance department is responsible for the preparation of your annual audit report. We actually do a comprehensive annual financial report, which is quite a few notches above just a regular report, and we're pretty proud of the fact that we have some plaques on the wall when you come into the governmental center showing that we're pretty proficient in that area. And that's not done alone.
How many years?
I'm hoping to get the 7th one,
The 7th
or
coming.
maybe the 8th one here real quick.
I think it's the 8th one. Will be coming.
Yeah, we have 7 for sure.
Cool.
We have 7 in hand.
And that's the GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. We also assist with at the Corrections and Department of Public Works with accounting support. I have a person who's over with the corrections folks every morning, helping with those accounting functions. We're involved in your property asset records, and we spend a little bit of time in the insurance aspect of what we do in terms of the annual renewal and any claims or liability issues that come along. This is probably some of the most critical information you ask. Who are our customers? Our customers, because we're an internal service function, are primarily other departments. We also provide services, though, to other local units of government, primarily the townships, vendors, employees, commissioners, and the public. We don't have a lot of statistics on who are, on how many customers we serve. That's something that we really need to work on. Our budget for 2013 was $512,000. For 2014, it's $551,000. And there are 5.4 FTEs in the finance department. I will provide you a copy of this document so that you have it for reference. Most importantly, our services that we provide, I believe, are important because they support the current services and programs that are provided by the county, the entire county. The work we do also demonstrates that some time ago, and I don't know when it was, this board felt that there was a need for a separate finance department. Some of the accounting work, smaller counties, it's done in other offices, primarily the clerk's office, but you saw the need for a dedicated professional staff, and that's what you have here. And I think that is very important because we're able to provide you with reliable budget and financial information to support the decisions that you make at every level, not only at this level, but actually within the department level as well. I think the biggest concerns, I'm not going to talk about the revenues, personal property tax. I think Jim already mentioned that. We've talked about the veterans tax exemption, and Dave has mentioned the cuts to state revenue sharing. They're there. We're going to have to find a way to deal with those, the effects of those changes. But demographically, I think your biggest challenge is the fact that this county is growing, and we're going to continue to grow. We're a destination county. That's going to pose some challenges, but I feel we'll be able to meet those challenges, and hopefully the increases in tax revenue from the new construction activity and even from just the change in the price level or the tax rate multiplier will give us some additional revenue to be able to do that. Just to touch briefly, we are always looking at ways to improve or alternative ways of providing services. I can go back to almost day one when I started here and provide you with a pretty extensive list of what we've done, but we've done a lot of things over time. One of the biggest improvements was in the area of accounts payable. We were probably on track to have to add a second person just to process vendor invoices, juror payments, restitution payments, just with how the volume that was coming in. But by going to the document imaging system, we took a lot of the manual process out of that. We even have an automated way to capture juror information from the juror database so that we can create that vendor record without having to rekey that in. So Jen mentioned the payroll, what we've done in that regard. You will have your W-2 electronically next year, Commissioner. And but we're always open and looking for those opportunities. But it's done primarily to be cost-effective and efficient. My staffing is approved at 6 FTEs, and with someone's retirement, we're down to 5.4. And that takes me into your probably the most important question you had, was what we would do, or what I would do if we were asked to reduce our budget. Well, I'll be honest, that would mean I'd have less staff. That's the reality. With the costs that are allocated there, you've got legacy costs in 2014, $55,000 for the defined benefit pension plan. Those costs don't go away. They'd be allocated someplace else, and that's 10% of the finance department budget. To implement any reduction in the finance department of any substance, of any significant amount, would require reduced staff. And if, without knowing what amount that would be for the finance department, I can't really tell you, but depending on what the amount was, I would evaluate the staff impact, and I would look at those core services that I briefly mentioned, and I would prioritize where we need to spend our time based on the available staffing. I don't know exactly what I would do differently. It's just too early to tell, based on, I guess, how large of a reduction we would have to, or be required to come up with, or to what the amount would be. The finance department is not a mandated department. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm required to be here, because I'm not. So, but I will ask you to look at your strategic plan, and as you've already heard, I think we're pretty high on your list.
Questions? Go ahead, Dan.
It looks like in your department, in 2013 versus 2014, you're looking at about a $40K increase in cost.
Correct.
And what percent, is that like 8% increase over last year?
Probably in that range. The bulk of that, we've had wage increases, 1.5%. So personnel costs have gone up, health insurance has increased, but the biggest increase is in the legacy costs that we're now allocating pretty much across the board to all payroll cost centers. That's a legitimate cost. I've had people that have retired in the office that are drawing that pension benefit, so it's primarily in personnel.
Okay. What is paying, I can see it has to go up. Where are we getting that extra money to pay that extra $40,000?
Well, that's primarily why you're having these budget meetings. As your general fund budget has included those additional costs, wage and salary increases to employees, health insurance increases, and obviously the increased payment to the retirement system. We've looked at,
Pension bonds.
use of fund balance has been the main revenue source. There were some increases in fee revenues that the board approved in the budget document, and you had some increase in tax revenue because of.
So we're not necessarily collecting more taxes to be able to keep up with these increased charges. We're finding some other way to do that.
That is correct. Tax revenues are increasing. Construction activity is up. We have what we feel is a conservative estimate of what that additional tax revenue will be built into the budget. You'll know in April, when we get the equalization report, what exactly, if we did a good job of estimating what that increase was, or if we were a little short.
Second question, do you think hiring a new person to do cost accounting for the county would be a benefit to us versus, I'm not saying giving up fund accounting, I know you can't do that, but is there a benefit to the county doing some cost accounting? So we can know, for instance, what it costs to have a sheriff's car do a run, or what it costs to give a wedding certificate.
That would be useful information to have. Back in 1994, I believe, we had the firm of, they've changed, but a cost accounting firm do that type of study for us. And the board then looked at what some of the costs were for some services, and they decided not to take the fee for that service to full cost, or to have the fee set at full cost recovery. I think you've dealt with that issue here recently with your CPO. Excuse me, officers. That would be information that could help you make those decisions, but then there's the other side of it. Do you really want to set that fee at a level to cover the full cost? Even, with the finance department, what's the full cost of having a finance department? We're not allocating indirect costs back to the finance department, but you do have other costs that are associated with the finance department, as there are with the Board of Commissioners.
Do you think one full-time person with skills like yours could do cost accounting for the county?
I believe if we determine that cost accounting is a priority, we can do that with the current staff.
Really? Okay. Well, cool. Thank you so much.
Other questions? Dean, again, thank you very, very much.
Sorry, I ran long.
No, you didn't run over.
Jen's
Neither did
fault.
Jen.
No, actually, we did pretty good.
You did really well.
Okay.
So, thank you. Any other questions on what we've seen today? Any other information that you would like to have from any of these departments that you've heard from that you would like to have additional information?
Thanks.
Awful quiet. I'm good. Okay, next we'll have public hearing. Public comment.
Hearing.
Public comment.
You're close. Oh, no.
I have a public comment. Actually, I have a question, and I figured this would be the best way to do it. I just received the minutes from last Friday's meeting, and it said that there was a notation that there was no budget meeting for Friday, February 28th. I also received a call about that. is that just because it wasn't on that proposed schedule? Or do you not want to have a meeting that date?
Chris, I believe the problem with February 28th was that Larry and Dave were both going to be out of town for MAC or NACO.
Okay.
And we'd kind of come to the fact that at that point, we were going to want to do an assessment based on the information that we've already had, and then create a plan moving forward.
Okay.
So we decided not to do it on the 28th because Dave and Larry would both be absent. So we have that scheduled, at least on my notes, on March 5th.
Okay. The only thing I'm going to ask you is I am starting to get a little bit of feedback from the letters and from that proposed schedule, and I just need to know if there's any dates into March that you want to reschedule meetings for, if we need them. Should we, schedule a few more?
Well, we should probably have heard from everybody by that date, I believe.
By that date, I'm sure we will, but I'm working with them right now to schedule March, or to schedule February, excuse me. And I just confirmed all the January meetings, and everyone's okay, but I just needed to know if I need that date, can I use it? But if we're going to definitely make sure that February 28th is out, that's a good thing. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing, Chris. Other questions? Next is public comment. No public comment?
Chairman, to make a
Motion
motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.